Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well today, and I'm going to be discussing my personal killer tier list and explaining my placements by giving my reasonings for why the killer was placed there as, standard tier list fashion. Keep in mind, this is just my opinion, and if you disagree with it, let me know where you would place the killers in the comments below, but also keep in mind that this tier list is subject to change, as killers might get a nerf, buff, or change in the Guest 666 and Veeronica update, so if you watch this in the future, just know that this predates the arrival of those characters and any associated changes that come with them to the other killers. I'm judging the killers based off my own personal experiences with them and how I personally feel about a killer when they're brought up in the context of the best killer in the game. With that all being said, let's start off with Mr. Default Killer himself. Ah yes, my personal favorite pick, Slasher. What do I think of Slasher? I personally think he's great, and I love playing him. He's my main killer after all, so I'm slightly biased. However, in reality, there's only a few things Slasher's actually good at, and overall, he's not a phenomenally strong character like some people tend to believe he is. However, let's go over his strengths first. Slasher excels at close-range combat, and is the best killer in the game at dealing with survivors from up close and personal. He has amazing firepower in gashing wound and behead, and it's a great way to finish off lower health survivors without having to go through the long kill animation, as well as stopping survivors from using abilities to help themselves while you're chasing them. You can also punish characters severely like Guest, Shed, Chance, Noob, Taff, and Builderman with Gashing Wound, as they have moves that lock them into certain animations or have moves that give them immense slowdown, and you can get a free 50 damage on them. He also has the fastest walk speed along with John Doe, and he also has the highest sprint speed in the game along with COOLKID. Also, your raging pace makes you unstunnable while using, and you gain your stamina back over time while you're in raging pace. Your attacks also pierce, allowing you to hit multiple survivors if they're too close to one another. Now you might think that sounds crazy strong, right? Well, you can actually counter him relatively easy if you know what you're doing. Let's now go over Slasher's cons. Slasher is the only killer without some kind of ranged attack, meaning that he can only hurt survivors from point blank. This also means that if you have distance on Slasher and are really far away from him, he literally can't do anything to you other than run after you until he gets close enough to actually hurt you. Slasher also struggles with really well coordinated teams, and if he's not playing super well, he can be completely shut down by sentinels who actually hit their stunning moves and support players keeping themselves away from Slasher and healing the sentinels up to full. If sentinels space their stuns out just right, Slasher can struggle with chasing people down, and he really needs to focus players down as he has no way to divide the pressure amongst many survivors. Slasher's kid is made for tunneling and focusing out one survivor at a time after all, and if you try to divide pressure as Slasher, you are playing him wrong and putting yourself at a disadvantage. Good stamina management around certain long walls and loops in the game on certain maps can also make Slasher struggle even with his extra stamina bar, aka raging pace, and the end lag on some of the moves, if you miss them, can really hinder your chase ability as well, especially Gashing Wound misses, as they slow you down a lot, and Behead also slows you down for a few seconds after using it too. So, taking all that we've talked about into account, Slasher excels at the close game and can be monstrous when played to his full potential, but he really struggles with super coordinated teams, and because his whole kit is based around tunneling one person at a time, he has to do that, which can lead to the other healthy teammates stunning and stalling time for the injured teammate, and he has no effective way to divide pressure amongst multiple survivors. So even though I love Slasher and he's my favorite killer in the game, I still think I can only give him a B ranking. Sorry buddy, you're consistent, but you also have very obvious pitfalls, but I'll always love you. Next up is... As with Slasher, we'll go over his strengths first. COOLKID is great at catching and ending chases with high damage output or even potentially killing the survivor super quickly, and a lot of people regard COOLKID as one of the strongest killers in the game. However, he has a few pitfalls that I personally think doesn't make him one of the strongest killers in the game. COOLKID's minions are great for catching survivors trying to set up or do gens off guard, and possibly allowing for some free damage and burning on those survivors, or allowing COOLKID to sort of corner the survivor and forcing an option on either running towards COOLKID or his minions, usually resulting in them getting hurt or dying. He also has projectile that slows and shows the survivor's aura when he's hit by it, making it good for slowing a weak survivor down to catch them or even just killing them on the spot. COOLKID's sprint speed is tied with Slasher's for the fastest in the game, and he has walk speed override for huge amounts of damage that inflict burning, and this move also has a very fast movement speed. COOLKID excels at close range and is relatively good at mid range as well, sort of making him probably the most all-rounder killer who's good at most most things. However, I said he's good at most things, not all things. COOLKID struggles with finding survivors the most out of any killer in the game, as your minions are good for showing you a direction, but that's all you get. Your only aura read is on hit from your corrupt nature, and that's really unreliable, as most survivors are not just going to stand around and get hit with it when they can see it coming. Plus, your minions are really slow, and unless a survivor is cornered, they can easily outmaneuver the minions, practically making them useless. Plus, the minions can be dealt with pretty easily themselves, as a well-timed guest block or chance shooting you when you're spawning them in will kill the minions and put them on cooldown. Your minions are also countered by Noob, 2-Time, and 007, as they all have stealth abilities that will make your minions switch targets when used, and there's nothing you can do about it other than watch them walk away or hope that they don't go too far before the survivor's stealth move runs out. You're really fast, and you have the fastest primary attack in the game, but that doesn't matter if you can't catch the survivor. Running out of stamina as COOLKID is a death sentence, and you thrive on ending chases quick and efficiently, and if you can't catch up and deal with them, you're not a threat to the survivor. Walk speed override is also super punishing, as the slight delay when starting it can give the survivor just enough of a heads up to move, or if they're a sentinel, block or stun when you're mid-flight or when the move ends. Some COOLKID players use walk speed when they're out of stamina to close the distance, but this is usually a really risky move and a bad idea unless the survivor is really predictable or cornered, because missing this ability can sometimes put you even further away from the survivor you were chasing, and you just have to watch them ride off into the sunset while you're stuck in your animation. Plus, the collision on some maps is really weird, and it might look like you'll stop on a wall or a rock, but actually just keep sliding and still be placed super far away from the survivor anyway. Plus, COOLKID can struggle finding survivors during last man standing, especially survivalists, and if the survivor is constantly on the move, you have to rely on the direction your minions are going. Even worse is leaving a 007 until last man standing, as if the minions show you where 007 is and you end up getting there, but he teleports away the second you get there, you just wasted a good chunk of time having to retrack the 007 down, and now your pizza minions have despawned and it's up to you to find them. Plus, using walk speed, your big damage ability, during last man standing is a really bad idea, as if you miss it, it can cost you the game because you're displacing yourself from the survivor. Honestly, COOLKID when played to his max potential can be really terrifying to go against, but most COOLKID players that I've seen in my experience with Forsaken are usually not these kinds of players. I personally would rank COOLKID below Slasher, and I really want to put him in C tier, but at the same time, I feel like when he's played to his max potential, he can be really troublesome, but I also feel like there's a bit of a ceiling to him. So with all that considered, I really want to place him in C tier, but I'll place him in B tier below Slasher, as Slasher has what COOLKID doesn't most times, which is consistency, and lack of aura read can really screw his tracking up, which is why he's below Slasher in my book. Next up is John Doe is a trapper-based killer and is arguably one of, if not the most skill-dependent killer in the game. Placing your digital footprint in calming looping areas is a way to shut down the loop or dissuade survivors from walking over to certain areas you haven't trapped up or might get looped at is a good way of applying control on survivors and the map early on into the match, as well as pairing it with your corrupt energy to effectively lock a survivor into a tiny area for you to berate them with attacks. You can also place your footprint on gens to possibly get free game slowdown, but I prefer to use it on looping spots, but it can be effective either way. Your passive Unstoppable also dissuades survivors from stunning you during your moves, except digital footprint, as if they do, you get a huge speed boost and you're stunned for less time, allowing you to catch up and punish them severely. You can also use your 404 error aura reading ability as a way to punish sentinel survivors for stunning you, as if you activate it quickly before a stun, you will gain your Unstoppable passive, and it can be used to catch them quickly after the stun ends. Your corrupt energy is your big kit ability, and it provides you with a guaranteed area shutdown and can really pile on the damage if a survivor gets hit by it multiple times. You can also trap people in corners and just dunk on them repeatedly with this move for a free kill. This ability, when paired with digital footprint, can prove just how monstrous a John Doe player can be, as getting trapped in an area that's locked down with the footprint or getting locked into an area alone with a John Doe is usually a death sentence. Now let's talk about some of his issues. John Doe is probably the most map dependent killer in the game, and a really bad map that's wide open with few or no choke points to place your traps or corral survivors with your spikes is usually a death flag for John Doe players. John Doe also has a huge attack windup, which makes characters like Guest a really good counter to John, as since his attack is a big windup, your animation is very easy to read, and unless you miss intentionally, the Guest will probably block and parry you. Your 404 error slows you down a pretty good amount, so it's only really helpful when figuring out survivor locations if you don't see anyone, and the parry tech I mentioned earlier is kind of hard to pull off unless you know the survivors is going to corner camp then stun, but most times you'll just be using it for the information. Elevation and maps that have a lot of different elevations like Brandon's Place and Assassin Grounds can make your spikes pretty useless, as they can just walk over them because the spikes will just be in the ground, rendering your attempts to cut them off useless. When you start placing your digital footprint, if a survivor times it correctly, they can easily just run past it and deny your speed boost if you had them trapped in. Survivors can also just simply avoid areas that you can trap them in at, as lots of experienced players will avoid certain buildings or areas depending on the map if it's a John Doe, and just hang out in the open to deny you easy usage of your powers. So when factoring all that information in, John Doe's issue isn't really an issue with his kit more so than the map design in Forsaken. John Doe, when played correctly, can be truly terrifying, as an area denial and trapper killer in ASIMs, when played to their full potential, are honestly scary to go against, but those killers also suffer the same issues that John Doe suffers, which is the map they play on, as some maps are brighter and some maps are darker, which means it can be easier or harder to hide traps on the map, and if the map is super open, then there's really not any good places to use your traps, and that's not really something that John Doe can control. So, due to the fact that John's kit isn't really the problem and it's just sort of the maps in Forsaken, I'm going to give our friend John an A tier ranking. There's a good mix of open and more closed off maps with choke points, but you don't know what map you're getting, and survivors can easily just avoid your areas, hence why he's an A tier and not an S tier. Next up is 1X is an aim and prediction reliant character whose arsenal of abilities are based around sniping and dealing with your targets from close to long range. 1X's Entangle is great at holding survivors in place while you hammer them with slashes or knock their head off their shoulders with your mass infection attack. 1X also has minions that they can summon once they've killed a few survivors that stay spaced around the map and chase survivors when they get close. These are great for applying constant map pressure, as characters like Builderman and Taff have no time to set up if they're getting chased by minions, and it'll keep survivors off generators as well. Your unstable eye blurs your screen a little, but also gives you a speed boost along with aura read on the survivors. If you have any minions in play, you can destroy your minions and gain a speed boost that stacks with your unstable eye ability, allowing you to close massive distances and catch survivors extremely quickly. Mass infection is great at getting a lot of damage on someone if you can predict their location, and if you hit someone with your entangle, you might have enough time to wind up your mass infection and possibly kill or gravely injure the survivor. Now let's go over some issues with 1X. 1X is the slowest killer in the game, and paired with their slow attack speed, if you're not using your abilities, you might struggle to land some hits and find it difficult to apply pressure on survivors. Since you're the slowest in the game, if you're not landing your abilities, survivors who can stamina manage and predict your moves are your biggest nightmare, as you will burn through your stamina trying to catch them, and usually you'll still be miles away even if they also ran out of stamina. Your abilities also have huge wind-up time, other than Entangle and Unstable Eye. Mass Infection has a huge wind-up time, and it plays a really loud audio cue when doing so. Typically, this gives the survivor ample time to react, and you can end up getting nothing from it unless they didn't hear it or you predicted their movement path correctly. You actually swing twice with Mass Infection. One is close range around your hitbox, and the other is your long range attack. This can bite you in the ass, however, as guest players can get a free block off the short range attack, and if Sentinel survivors are close while you're charging up your Mass Infection, they can stun you out of it and put you on cooldown. Your Unstable Eye is a good ability, but it also makes a loud audio cue, and typically survivors will start to run or move if they hear you use it to avoid being sniped. Now, your biggest weakness as 1X is elevation. 1X cannot aim their attacks like COOLKID, and your attacks will always go in a straight line regardless of elevation. And trust me, a good survivor will torture you with differing elevations, making it almost impossible to land your attacks sometimes. However, most maps have 2 high elevation points, and if survivors are just camping one of the high points on the map, you can usually go to the other one and poke at them with Entangle or Mass Infection. But as mentioned earlier, Mass Infection has a wind-up sound, meaning they can probably just move out of the way, especially if they see it coming. Overall, 1X is another heavy skill-reliant killer, and if you're not good at predicting your moves or survivor pathing, and if you can't adapt to maps with differing elevations, you're going to struggle on this killer. However, 1X played to their max potential can downright brutalize teams sometimes, and I've been the victim of extremely skilled 1X players as well. So I think that with all that considered, 1X has a plethora of options available to them in their kit, and only really good teams can stop a pro 1X player sometimes. And since 1X is extremely skill reliant, if you get good at prediction and adapting to elevation changes depending on the map, you can become a server wiping monster. So for that, I think 1X is deserving of our first S tier ranking. Finally, we have NOLI is an immensely technical killer, and they are probably the most Mr. Everything of all the killers because it really does feel like NOLI can do pretty much everything that a lot of the other killers seem to be missing most times. NOLI can see auras and teleport across the map with Observant. NOLI can also traverse the entire map with Void Rush, and if they slam into a survivor and chain it off multiple survivors like a damn pinball machine, then you can dish out crazy amounts of damage, especially if the survivor's hallucination stacks are really high. And did I mention you can actually turn with this dash move unlike COOLKID? You can also drag survivors back to their previous location, or you can drag them off really high locations with the Void Star. NOLI also has fake generators and can trick the survivors into wasting time and gaining hallucination stacks, and NOLI also has clones that are deceptively real sometimes, as they can use abilities, stamina manage, and just throw you off really bad unless you're coordinated with other survivors. Now, even though NOLI seems like the quintessential killer, they do have some things that can make their life a bit harder. Every single one of your attacks has a pretty big wind-up time, meaning that if the survivors have fast reaction times, they can usually just stun you and cancel you out of your abilities. NOLI also gets countered by Guest and shockingly Builderman, as Void Rush can be countered by a Builderman Sentry, as slamming into one will stop your rush. You can also give Guest a free block with Void Rush unless you cancel it in front of them, and you also won't stop when running into a Guest block, and you keep going when using Void Rush. Void Rush is a great traversal move, but your turn rate is amplified only at the start of your rush, and then it's slightly more difficult to turn. NOLI can also fall short against teams with communication, whether it's on Discord or the Roblox voice chat, as your clones are effectively useless if called out, and your fake gens won't help stall time if the survivors know what to look for or call out a fake generator for teammates to avoid. Your Void Star's hitbox is also different sizes depending on if it hits the ground / survivor or if it hits a wall. You also have the largest hair radius of any killer, meaning the survivors can hear you coming way before you actually manage to get close to them. Your basic attack also removes all stacks of hallucinations a survivor might have. NOLI is also slightly more difficult on console and phones due to Void Rush turning sensitivity and due to accuracy with the Void Star. However, even with the drawbacks to NOLI I mentioned, NOLI is still an amazing and all-around fun technical killer when you actually get the hang of them, and because of how many positives NOLI has going for them and their immense pressure they can apply on survivors, I think NOLI is deserving of the final S tier spot on my tier list. So, that's the tier list, and this is how I personally feel about all the killers in Forsaken. Let me know if you agree or disagree with some of my placements, and let me know where you would personally place the killers. I'm sure you can make a case to flip-flop some of the killers between different tiers, and a killer will also perform differently dependent on player skill in the lobby, so keep that in mind and don't take my tier list to heart. Every killer fits a specific niche, and sometimes killers are just going to naturally be weaker at some things than others. That's just how asymmetrical games have always worked, and that's just completely okay. At the time of re-recording this video, Guest 666 and Veeronica have been announced to release on Halloween, aka this upcoming Friday. I will make a video covering them and giving my own personal opinions on them probably the day after on Saturday or on Sunday if I don't get to it in time, and I'll give you what I would personally probably place them on my tier list in that video. Other than that, please subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoy my videos, as it helps me out immensely, and leave some suggestions for future videos you want to see in the comments. And finally, have a great day, week, month, whichever comes first, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.